In this video, we're going to be talking about how you can create more time as a high schooler, so you can pour 100% of your energy into working on your passion projects towards your life purpose. And speaking from someone who's about to complete one of the most rigorous high school programs out there in a few months' time, the IBDP, I know how it can feel when you come home from school. Feeling super excited to finally get started on writing that book or building that business and working on that project that you've been dreaming about for a while. Only to find yourself next minute being overwhelmed with more deadlines, more work, and more stress. And life gets in the way, and your brain tells you that you have to do this and you have to do that. So you tell yourself to lock in. You tell yourself that you're going to start this project tomorrow with no more excuses. And then time flies by, and you know what happens. A teacher suddenly reminds the class that there's an algebra test in 2 days, and then your mind says, alright man, just this one exception, just this once. I'll lock in for this test, and after this test, I promise you I'm going to start this project. And then you could probably guess what happens after that test, right? New deadline seems to pile and pile, and you keep making excuses after excuse after excuse. Until one day, you wake up and you realize that you're about to graduate high school. And now you're probably like, Bosco, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with starting my passion projects during university and not now? I mean, I want to spend time with my friends and enjoy my life and relax in high school, right? But let me just give you a reality check of what's actually going to happen in university. I know most people think that in college things are going to change. But in reality, most people who go to university do not have a single clue of what they want in life. And what happens because of that? You begin to follow the crowd because you have no other directions. You begin to do things that you know that does not fulfill you. Or if it does fulfill you, it's shallow and temporary. And how am I saying this in a tone that I'm 99% certain about this? Well, it's because I've watched countless of day in a life vlogs videos on YouTube and spoken to so many different university students from real life to podcasts. And most notably, I've myself been not only into one, but two pre-college programs at top universities. And I see this happening to everyone everywhere. So it's time to change how you use and manage your time. Because most people are doing it wrong. Most people think that time is your greatest enemy. They think that time is finite, right? Which means you need to maximize and optimize every single second. But really take a look at how this mindset is affecting you. Do you have any time for relaxation? Do you feel tired and mentally drained all the time? Do you feel like you're constantly on a hamster wheel? And if it's yes to any of these questions, I promise you that by the end of this video, you'll never make an excuse to yourself on not having enough time, because I will literally show you how to create more time. And if you do find yourself making these excuses, I want you to rewatch this video again, because the solution is here. And it might just take some time for your brain to drill all of the understanding in. So to begin, the first thing that you want to do if you want to create more time is you need to track how you're spending your time. And really, it doesn't matter how you do it, right? It could be using a digital calendar. You could even do it on paper if you like, which was something that I tried out at one point. And for me personally, what I use currently is Google Calendar. It's been one of my best friends for a couple of years now. And I'm not going to go in depth with exactly how I set up my Google Calendar system because there are tons of videos out there on this topic already, and there's no point of repeating the same thing over and over again. And really what I've found is that there's no right answers to the best setup, and it's really down to trial and error, figuring out what personally works for you. So let's just say now you have a calendar system and you've tracked your time for at least 1 week. And just to clarify, what I mean by tracking your time is also tracking the specifics right? Most people, they only track the general times from going to school and taking whatever class. But then tracking your time means also tracking the time you go to bed, tracking the time you have lunch, tracking the time you watch YouTube and chat with your friends. And it might seem very specific, but it doesn't have to be that exact. So, for example, let's just say you watch Netflix for 11 minutes and you spend 15 minutes chatting on Instagram and 5 minutes checking Reddit, right? What I'll do in the process of tracking my time is just labeling this as leisure for 30 minutes. And then once you've done that and labeled all of the different time blocks during the week, I want you to just take a look at it without any judgments. So really open that week schedule, or if it's digital, just turn on the tab and just look at it without any judgments. Most likely you're going to feel some sort of frustration, as it's painful to see and face reality when you've spent so much time wasted in the past. And it's okay, right? Because it's not your fault. And what's most important is I want you to accept that this is the past. This has happened already. You can't change it. But what you can do is change the present moment and how you control your schedule from now on. What you can do is prevent this from happening in the future. You know, one thing that I noticed when I was doing this exercise myself 4 years ago is a lot of the time when I jumped from working on this math question to suddenly working on my English essay and moving from here to there, is because I was being indecisive. Like, back then I knew that there was a test coming up for both subjects, but I was fearful that I didn't give myself enough time to study for each subject. So what ended up happening was I was switching back and forth depending on what my head told me to do during that moment. And with that, you can probably see the problem, right? The problem with that is every time when you switch to doing something else, you lose the flow state. You lose focus on doing the actual thing. And even though we may say that our brain is super powerful in multitasking, and you watch those videos talking about how you can optimize your time, it actually has its own energy bar. And this is one thing that many people don't realize. Because every single time you decide to multitask, you're actually using up your energy even more, because you're trying to focus on two things when your mind is supposed to only focus on one thing. And eventually this produces less efficient outcomes. A really simple way to understand this is every single day when you wake up, you're granted with a limited amount of brain tokens. And let's just say you're granted with 100 brain tokens and only 100 tokens every single day. Each decision that you make, or when you use your brain to do something like schoolwork, for example, the rigor of the activity will determine the brain power needed for the activity and how many tokens you give away. So basically, the more brain power the work requires, the more tokens you give away. So now, when you take a look at all of these tokens that you've earned every day in the morning and gave away during the day, you start to realize that you're actually spending some of these tokens in a really stupid way when you look back at that sheet of tracking your time, right? And I'm not even pointing out at the leisure activities or whatever activity you feel guilty for wasting your time on. And I'm speaking about those moments when you're feeling indecisive, which causes the roots of many of your problems. For example, when during the day you ask the question of what should I eat lunch, and then you spend 10 minutes just thinking about what you want to eat lunch during a specific class, or should I be doing this right now or doing that right now? Or for example, in my case, if I should do English or if I should do math when both of the tests are tomorrow. And just by freezing during the moment and debating between the options that you have, you're already wasting so much brain power which you could have used instead on the activity itself. So what's the solution with this? The solution with this is to block out a chunk of time once every single week to pre-plan your schedule for the upcoming week. And this sounds super simple, right? It's not rocket science. But this is literally the secret that every single successful high schooler out there who are doing crazy things, achieving crazy grades, and those people that you see online, And everyone else who is successful, who's your idols out there, they're doing it in the same form one way or another. So for me personally, what I like to do is I currently block out 2 hours every Sunday afternoon just doing my timetable planning. And during this planning time, what I simply do is look back at the past week on how I spent my time in different areas. And then I would take out the schedules and the deadlines that I have for multiple different projects that are going on, school being one of them as well, and basically prioritize and start blocking out 15 to 30 minute chunks of time blocks for the upcoming week on your calendar. You know, this is one thing I really like about Google Calendar, is that it allows you to color code everything, so that I can clearly see how much time I've dedicated for different activities and what needs more balance, and you can do all that analytics as well. One obstacle you may face when you actually take the time and do this and sit down to pre-plan your week is that you might get stuck on deciding what you should do at what times. And this is a common problem that I've encountered several times. So let's just say you're trying to pre-plan what you're going to do during the upcoming Monday at 4 to 6 p.m., let's say. So then you start thinking and you start generating the different options you can do. You say, I can go to the gym or study for history, study for math, practice playing the piano, and then you continue listing out different options that you can do. So which one should it be, right? Which one's the right answer? And then you ask, Bosco, what is your opinion? Which one should I do? And every single time someone asks me that question, I respond to them with 3 words. I don't know. And it might sound like I'm moving away from the goal of this video, which is telling you exactly how you're supposed to build your schedule. But are you someone who likes to focus right after school? What time do you normally sleep? What happens during 4 p.m. every single day? Do you like eating dinner at 5 p.m. or later than that, right? So instead of asking me for an answer, I should be the one asking you for answers, because there is no right or wrong answer, right? This is where most people get it wrong. What's most important with these scheduling blocks is that you commit to doing something and testing it out for a couple of weeks and see whether or not it works for you. Because what works for you might not work for me. And only you can be the scientist of your life. And I want to repeat that again. Only you can be the scientist of your life. And this applies to all the systems that you learn online, right? What we can only do at most is show you the systems and the frameworks that empowers you to regain control over your time, so then you can start living from your higher self. But ultimately, you need to be the one controlling your life and taking action and really putting in the work to find out what works best for you. And this process comes only through the trial and error, right? So don't be scared if you're trying to do something new and test out a new system, right? Because we always have this subconscious fear of what if it doesn't work? We ask these what if questions. And my response to all these what if questions is always saying that now, because you know that this didn't work, you can cross that system out and eliminate it as an option for you in the future. You also need to start noticing that every single activity that happens in your life can be categorized into 2 groups. One of them is low value activities, and the other one is high value activities. And what do I mean by low value activities? I'm talking about activities like checking emails, completing brain dead or BS assignments, and you know what I'm talking about. Ones that requires low brain effort, but you just gotta get it done. And these things, on the first glance, may seem like it's so important to the point where you trick yourself into pouring all of your attention into them 24/7, because normally they're urgent and they're flashy, right? Like, I remember I used to have my email tab open every single minute of the day, and whenever a new email popped into my inbox, I would instantly switch tabs and check it instantly, because you have that red dot that's just constantly blinking, telling you that you have a new email, right? But what actually happens over time is that these activities drain your energy. They distract you from what you're focusing on by pulling your brain to care about something else, which is completely irrelevant to the task that you're doing. And yes, on the surface level, it might seem insignificant, but then going back to the concepts of brain tokens, if you think about it, if you have a limited amount of tokens every single day, you're going to want to maximize the efficiency of using it if you truly value your life and want to take ownership of your time, right? So what you want to start doing is start noticing these brain dead activities on your calendar. Like, which activities are the ones that you can really do when you're super tired and half asleep, right? And this process also requires being super honest with yourself and not tricking yourself to believe that something's important when it's not important, because your mind does a super good job with that. It's very important to remember that in life, it's not just about working hard, right? It's about working smart. Because once you've identified these tasks, you can deal with them by batching them up. And this simply means blocking out a dedicated period of time every week or every single day to do all of these low-value tasks you need together in one block. So rather than having them separated out and making you distracted all over the day, you put them all together, right? You still do them, but then it's clunked up together. And that's it, right? It's really as simple as those strategies that I've shown you before to really create more time. And the key factor is becoming more aware of how these small little things are sucking your energy, or just making these little tweaks to your workflow by batching similar types of work together. And that itself already makes a huge difference in your schedule and your productivity levels. And most of the time, the problem is that because it's so simple, most people tend to ignore or look over them. So what you want to do is do the complete opposite. You want to start paying more attention to moments of indecisiveness, or when you're most productive and in the flow state, and really mark those down so then you can continue creating replicates for your future work. And then from there, you can start intentionally planning your schedule to make it fit whatever vision you're trying to accomplish and make time really your best friend, right? I just want to wrap this video up with a personal story, which I hope will inspire you to take action with everything that I've shown you in this video. It was around the end of my summer break last year, and there were like 3 days left, and I'm planning to enjoy the final days in peace, just relaxing at home, doing nothing before heading to junior year of your high school, which is a super intense period of your life or high school journey. And more specifically, this is around the time when you start to get like your timetable, and you ask around your friends and message them to see who's in the same class as you, and then your teachers are starting to invite you to Google Classroom, and then you constantly refresh the people's page every now and then to see who's actually in your class because you're so excited. So one of the invites that I got was to a class called Leadership and Peer Support. And before this invite, I actually didn't know this class exists. But on a first glance, it seems like it's something pretty chill, right? Nothing to worry about. So I put that out of my head. But then one day later, oh boy, I was hella wrong. I started getting email after email saying assignment after assignment after assignment. And I just thought to myself, what in the world is going on? How are we getting so many assignments before school even started? And I remember at the end, I got a total of 45 emails for 45 different assignments that I had to do for this one course. So I was like sitting on my couch and I was like, oh, do I really want to look at this? So I decided to click on one assignment, and the question that was asking me, the assignment was write a paragraph explaining what it means to be a leader. And I was like, oh man, I don't want to write another paragraph. So then I read that email and then moved on to the next email, and the email says, fill in this Google form showcasing how you are a leader in different aspects of your life. It's pretty funny because the more and more I read, the more and more I realized that these are reflection types of questions. And what does it mean by reflection types? It means that these are questions that I can already do now in this present moment, which requires minimal brain power compared to your typical subjects, which you have to memorize knowledge in. So it has low value add to me, but it just requires time to kill. So this is a really good example to apply the concept that we talked about in this video, right? What I decided to do was spend the next day supermanning my way through all 45 assignments. And yes, when I say all 45 assignments, I mean completing them in great detail, thoroughly, all 45 of them completed before school even started. And while everyone was chilling out there, I decided to make this choice. Why? Well, because I see that this action buys me time for the future, right? And on the surface level, it may seem really stupid for someone to spend the last days of their summer vacation grinding through schoolwork before school started when they could just be relaxing. But then I saw otherwise. Because I knew that if I procrastinated on these assignments, then I would diversify my attention to something that was not worth my attention, which would take up my future time and energy. And so fast forward to the future, because our school actually schedules some time daily for us just to complete these assignments at the beginning of the school year, I had the luxury to spend that time elsewhere. Spend that time building my podcast, running my agency, doing things that actually grew me in the long run, or simply spending my time studying other subjects. And that inner joy you get for granting yourself this freedom is just so beautiful, right? Buying yourself time is such a big luxury during this age, especially when you have all of the resources you can imagine out there laying on the internet already. And while your friends are intensively typing away and panicking to finish this deadline, while having to deal with tests coming up as well, you're just there relaxing because you know the secret strategy. You completed it way ahead of them. And most importantly, you brought yourself time. I keep emphasizing this because it's such a beautiful factor. You bought your future self the luxury and freedom to spend that time on working on something that actually matters, passion projects that truly gives you fulfillment. I hope that gives you some more inspiration on taking action with everything in the video. And if you need to, feel free to always rewatch the video, as sometimes it takes more than one listen to get everything in, especially when I'm doing a lot of these self-studying sessions. Yeah. I'm super excited for all of the new content that we're posting on this channel. Can't wait to continue sharing all of these awakened wisdoms to every one of you guys out there who are ready to embrace this to live a fulfilled life. Catch you guys on the next one.